Oh. Here, wait. Don't worry about that. Here, I'm gonna react to his story first. What? Never subscribed to this guy. Since when? Start with this one.
I took my son to the carnival for his birthday, and when I asked what he wanted, his answer wasn't what I expected. With a huge smile, he said, "To save people, Dad." I kissed him on the forehead for being a sweet kid, but then a scream ripped through the crowd. Above us, the Ferris wheel burst into flames, and everyone erupted into chaos as fire rained down on us. I grabbed for my son's hand to run, but the stampede slammed into us and ripped him away from me. I screamed his name, spinning in every direction, but all I could see was smoke and fire. An alarm blared through the smoke, and as I ran, my foot caught on something. My son's little jacket trampled and singed. My heart slammed as I snatched it up and shoved my phone in every face I passed. "Have you seen this boy? Please, I need to find my son." No one stopped. They just streamed past me toward the exits guided by firefighters. Then a firefighter's voice tore through the smoke. "Everyone out now! The Ferris wheel's about to collapse." But a woman grabbed my arm and pointed toward the flames. That boy, he ran that way, screaming.
Yo, his son's... Wait, are these real, though? Are these real? His son went into the fire.
My whole body shook. If it collapsed, it'd kill him. So I ran straight toward it. The heat seared my skin, but I didn't stop until the Ferris wheel buckled and crashed down around me. A beam slammed across my legs, and I screamed as the flames burned through my sleeve into my arm. I dropped against the ground, sobbing. My son had wished to save people, and I couldn't even save him. My vision blurred. Then I felt hands clamp around me and pull me through the smoke. Firefighters laid me on the grass and strapped an oxygen mask over my face as I cried, certain my son was gone. But then, through the haze, I saw a small figure in a firefighter's jacket walking toward me. Dad,
What?
I thought I was hallucinating, until my son dropped to his knees beside me, safe, an oversized firefighter suit swallowing his body. A firefighter knelt next to him and gripped his shoulder. "Your son pulled the fire alarm and helped us evacuate everyone. He even told us you'd still be inside looking for him. He didn't get ripped away from the crowd. He left to save everyone." My son beamed at me. "My wish came true, Dad. Best birthday ever."
What? Are these real? Here, wait, I'm gonna try to find my own live. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no. Yo, help me. Yo, help me. Yo, help me. Okay, whoa, that was insane. Okay, let's react to my videos. Best duo, guys. Best duo. Basil and my cat. POV, you join MM2 just in time for a map. For a map, you get sheriff, but the murder leaves. This makes sense. Wait, I'll be right back. Wait, guys, I'm AFK. Or no, wait, there's no one here.
The moment I heard Dad took his motorcycle keys. I was 13 and had been binge-watching videos of motorcycles hitting 150-mile speeds and desperately wanted to ride one. My dad's Kawasaki Superbike sat in our garage while he cleaned it every night. I asked him, could I ride it? But he laughed and said, "This thing is my baby, and you've never even driven a car. You could die, or even worse, destroy my bike." So one night, I had enough and snuck out. My heart was pounding as I pulled the covers off the Kawasaki. I started working the keys, but I couldn't turn it on. Finally, I twisted the handlebar, and the motorcycle lurched forward forward way too fast for me to control. I twisted the brakes and it slammed to a stop so fast I went flying. I hit the pavement and bruised my elbow, and through the window I saw my dad getting out of bed. I instantly panicked and jumped back on the Kawasaki. I twisted the throttle and slowly took off, turning out of the driveway before he could see me. My heart slammed and I gripped the handlebars so tight my knuckles turned white. But then I hit 20 on the speedometer. The bike still wobbled, but I was gaining control. I felt the wind in my hair and laughed, ready to go faster. But then two guys blocked the road ahead. I twisted the brakes to slow, trying to look cool doing it, but they immediately grabbed my collar. "What's a little squirt like you doing with a Kawasaki?" They ripped me off and threw me to the ground, and my heart dropped as they started climbing on. "No, wait, that's my dad's." I reached for the bike, but their hands were already on the throttle. "See you never chump." They took off, doing at least 80
Yo,
immediately. I put my head in my hands and sat on the curb crying. How would I ever tell this to Dad? I walked the 10 miles home, legs shaking because Dad spent his life savings on that bike. When I walked inside, Dad was already awake at the kitchen table, pacing with his arms above his head. "Someone stole my bike." I gulped and slowly waddled over, ready to confess. But then I saw the newspaper on the table. 2 teenagers die in a motorcycle crash on a stolen Kawasaki. Photos of Dad's motorcycle and the 2 teens who took the bike from me. I covered my mouth in horror as Dad grabbed the newspaper. They deserve to die for stealing my bike. Whoever steals my bike deserves to die. 2 hours later, the officers returned the bike, its front end completely caved in. I watched Dad hug his Kawasaki in tears and snuck upstairs. I'd never tell him the truth. The moment I heard Dad snoring, I crept downstairs and took his motorcycle keys. Me and my family were walking through time. I went to a Marriott ballroom for econ extra credit and ended up running from a man in a 3-piece suit calling himself Maximus Masters. Noah signed our names on the extra credit sheet and pushed open the doors. Free steak and a great bump, I'd sit through my own funeral for that. A woman in a navy blazer was on us before the doors swung shut. "Welcome, future entrepreneurs. I'm Crystal." She slapped name tags on our chests that read, "Guest of Honor," and steered us to the front row with a hand on each of our backs. "Where's the bar?" Noah asked. After the presentation, Crystal sang and disappeared into the crowd. 60 people sat around us, wearing the same wide smile, staring at an empty stage. Nobody was talking. "I don't see anyone from our class," Noah whispered. "Maybe we're early." "Dude, the room is full." The lights cut out and techno music shook the floor. 2 fog machines fired smoke across the stage, and a man in a 3-piece suit walked through it with his arms over his head. "Who wants to be financially free?" The room exploded as people shot out of their seats, pumping fists. We didn't move. "Is this extra credit or a hostage situation?" Noah whispered. For 40 minutes, Maximus paced the stage, ranting about yachts and cellular metabolism powder. Slide after slide behind him of him holding stacks of cash. A guy 2 rows back stood up sobbing about how he used to work at Subway. "It's a pyramid scheme," Noah said. I nodded and started to stand, but Crystal materialized behind us. "Leaving? You haven't seen the compensation structure." She pressed down on my shoulder. "Sit." We sat. When it finally ended, she pulled out an iPad and asked which package spoke to us. "We're just here for class credit," I told her. Her smile cracked. "You're scared of success. People like us retire at 30. The whole room turned to watch. Maximus walked over, sweat soaking through his collar, and put a hand on each of our shoulders. "Gentlemen, let me introduce you to the man who changed my life." The fog machines kicked on again. An older man in a white suit stepped through the smoke onto the stage. Noah's hand clamped around my forearm. "Dude, that's our prof." Professor Jacobson smiled at me from the stage. The same wide smile Crystal had. The same smile the Subway guy had. The same smile every single person in that room had been wearing since we sat down. He tapped the microphone twice. "Welcome, gentlemen. Let's talk about your extra credit." We ran. I went to a Marriott ballroom for econ extra credit and ended up running from a man in a 3-piece suit calling himself Maximus Masters. I was setting up camp alone in a forest when I heard explosions nearby and smoke hit my nostrils. I followed the noise and found a teenager laughing, lighting fireworks into the trees, filming himself on a tripod, live on TikTok. This is going to go so viral, but the forest was bone dry and one spark could burn the whole thing down. "Stop! You're gonna start a fire!" "Relax, bruh. I know what I'm doing." Then he lit another, and the firework arced up, landed in a bush, and flames tore through the leaves.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. How do I?
My ball help, but he swung his camera toward the fire, grinning. "Yo, this is even better content. I need more fire." The fire climbed a tree behind me, and families came sprinting past, coughing and screaming, dragging their kids from the smoke. I looked back and saw my own tent swallowed in flames, everything I owned gone. I yelled, "Is going viral worth this?" I grabbed his arm to pull him out, but he yanked away. "You don't get it. I have to do this." And he stepped toward the fire for a better shot. The smoke was so thick my eyes burned and every breath became shorter. If I didn't run now, the flames would swallow me too. So I turned to run, but a burning tree cracked and crashed down behind me, and through the flames I saw the kid's arm shoot up, a hospital wristband on his wrist, as he screamed for help. My body screamed at me to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I couldn't let him die, so I turned back and ran into the flames. I grabbed his arm as he cried. cried, a hospital band melting against my palm. I picked him up as I ran away from the fire and I yelled, "Why would you do this?" He lifted his shaking wrist, tears streaming. "My little sister has cancer. They told us if we don't get money for her treatment soon, she'll die." He looked down. "I just don't want her to." I went to a Marriott. I was setting up camp alone in a He cried, a hospital band melting against my palm. I picked him up as I ran away from the fire and I yelled, "Why would you do this?" He lifted his shaking wrist, tears streaming. "My little sister has cancer. They told us if we don't get money for her treatment soon, she'll die." He looked down. "I just don't want her to die. I'm sorry." My throat closed, but before I could respond, firefighters and police charged in. "You've got the little arsonist who did this for views. Criminal. We saw his live," an officer yelled. But the kid just lowered his head as they slapped cuffs on him. Everyone will call him a monster, but I knew the truth. I was setting up camp alone I was at work when my boss yanked me into his office by my collar. "Bring a real llama to this office in 2." I walked into the doctor's office.
I am Loki game board. Oh wait, you want me? Okay. Whoever liked, I'm watching more.
My twin brother Chris and I were 9 when we learned Morse code. We tapped messages under the dinner table when Mom told us to stop talking and tapped through the wall between our bedrooms every night. When Chris got into a car accident and the doctor said he'd never wake up, I pulled up a chair next to his bed, took his hand, and tapped. "Are you there?" Nothing. But I came back the next afternoon and tapped again. Before I left, I always said the same thing. "See you tomorrow, Chris." A week later, Chris's fingers twitched against mine, and I almost fell out of my chair. I grabbed a nurse and she barely looked up. They're reflexes. It doesn't mean anything. I bought a notebook the next day and started writing down every single one. 4 months in, Mom watched me scribbling and said, "How long are you gonna keep doing this? Until he taps back." He's not gonna tap back. You're talking to a corpse. Dad lasted a few more months before he pulled me into the hallway. "We need to talk about donating your brother's organs. His fingers move every time I hold his hand, Dad. The nurses said those are reflexes. Stop getting your hopes up, son." I don't care what the nurses say. You're not donating my brother's organs. But a week later, my parents called to have Chris transferred to a long-term facility to die and scheduled a meeting to sign the papers. The afternoon before the meeting, I tapped into his palm like always, but this time, something tapped back. Short, short, short. Long, long, long. Short, short, short. SOS. I grabbed his hand. "Chris, if that's you, squeeze once." He squeezed so hard my knuckles cracked. I stormed into the meeting room and told them my brother just responded to me. The caseworker said, "This is very common with families who aren't ready to let go." My parents nodded. I grabbed the transfer papers off the table. "You're not signing anything until you come see for yourself." I walked them to Chris's bed and grabbed his hand. "Ask him anything." The caseworker asked what year it was. Chris squeezed out the answer. Count to 5. 5 perfect squeezes. His mother's name, tapped out letter by letter. By the 10th question, she said, "He's still alive. We can't move him." Weeks later, I asked Chris what kept him fighting when everyone gave up. Heard Mom call me a corpse. Heard Dad say donate my organs. Heard all of them leave, except you. I asked why. I wanted to see you too. My twin brother Chris and I were 9 when the flight attendant slipped me a napkin that said, "The pilot isn't who he says he is." My daughter came home crying with an F because her teacher doesn't know what color blood is. The first time I realized something was wrong, Riley came home from school holding out her arm. "Look, Dad, you can see the blue blood in my veins right here." She traced the blue lines under her skin with her finger. I put down my coffee and looked at her. "Actually, sweetheart, that's not true. Blood is always red because of hemoglobin. It's just darker red in your veins." Her face scrunched up, but Mrs. Miller showed us a whole PowerPoint about it. She even had diagrams from a science book. The next morning, I packed my work scrubs in my bag. I'm an ER nurse at Mercy General, and I was working the afternoon shift anyway. I sent Mrs. Miller an email asking if I could do a quick presentation about blood for career day that afternoon. She loved the idea. When I arrived, Mrs. Miller introduced me as Riley's dad, who works at the hospital. 28 kids stared up at me from their desks. "I heard you guys learned that blood is blue inside your body," I said. The entire class nodded enthusiastically. Mrs. Miller beamed from her desk in the corner. I pulled out a blood collection tube from my pocket and held it up. "This is what we use to draw blood at the hospital. Notice something. The tube creates a vacuum. No oxygen inside at all." I paused. "When we draw blood with these, it never touches oxygen until we pop the cap off." I showed them photos on my phone of sealed blood tubes. "See? Still red." Mrs. Miller's smile started fading. She shifted in her chair and cleared her throat. A boy raised his hand and pointed to their science textbook. But our textbook says it's blue. I picked up the book and checked the publication date, 1998. Medicine updates pretty fast. We used to think lots of things that turned out to be wrong. Mrs. Miller suddenly stood up from her desk, her hands gripping the edge. Well, thank you for that interesting presentation, Mr. Johnson, but we need to move on to math now. I nodded and started packing when a girl in the back raised her hand. So our textbook is wrong? The class erupted in whispers. Mrs. Miller's jaw clenched and her voice got tight. The curriculum says, actually, I interrupted, pulling up the state science standards on my phone. I walked over and turned my phone toward her. The current curriculum specifically mentions this myth as something to correct. She stared at the screen and her eyes narrowed. Her mouth pressed into a thin line and her nostrils flared. Can I speak with you in the hallway? The kids watched as we walked out and the door closed behind us. Do you have any idea how hard it is when parents undermine my authority? Her face was red and her voice was sharp. Now they'll question everything I say. I kept my voice calm. Isn't that exactly what we want them to do? Question things and learn critical thinking? She crossed her arms tightly. I've been teaching for 22 years. I'm not changing my whole curriculum because some nurse thinks he knows better than our textbooks. The next day, I found out Mrs. Miller gave the class a pop quiz. Riley came home crying, her face red and puffy. Her hands were shaking as she handed me a paper with a big red F on it. I took a deep breath and felt my jaw tighten as I looked at the question. What color is blood inside the body? Riley had written red, and Mrs. Miller had marked it wrong. I requested a meeting with Principal Davis and brought printouts of medical textbooks, the state science standards, and Riley's quiz. The principal called in Mrs. Miller and asked her directly, is blood blue inside the body? After a long pause, Mrs. Miller said, it's what the children understand better. I leaned forward in my chair. My daughter is crying every morning before school because she's afraid of getting F's for writing down the truth. The next day, the school replaced their science books. Now whenever Riley learns something new at school, she comes home and asks me, Dad, is this actually true or is it just a Mrs. Miller truth? My daughter came home crying with an F because her teacher doesn't know what color blood is. The first time I realized, every time we heard a knock on the front door, my dad would yell, "Step!" A man climbed onto our school bus with a knife, and the first thing he heard was a slow clap from the back row. Confused, he screamed at our driver, Mrs. Worley, to keep driving and not stop for anyone. A kid leaned forward. Nice ski mask. Did you cut the holes out yourself or did your mommy help you? The whole bus laughed. He waved the knife around. Shut up and no one gets hurt. Your hand is shaking so hard I can't tell if that's a threat or a dance move. He stepped toward the kid who said it, and 20 voices started talking at once. Oh, he's walking now. Everybody watch out. He spun around trying to find who said what, but insults were coming from every direction. Bro seriously hijacked a bus with no plan, no getaway car, and a Walmart knife. This is the saddest crime I've ever seen. We wouldn't let him finish a single sentence. Are you robbing us for money? All I have is an EBT card and a bus pass. He pointed his knife at Mrs. Worley, and the whole bus went silent. A kid stood up. You can threaten us all you want, but if you point that thing at Mrs. Worley again, we're gonna have a real different conversation. He laughed nervously and asked what a bunch of kids were going to do about it. A girl said, we're on the bus to the school for troubled teens. Half of us are here for assault, and the other half won't say why. Mrs. Worley looked at him over her shoulder. Honey, I've watched these kids make grown men cry over smaller things than pointing a knife at me. He lowered the knife. Smart choice. She brings us donuts on Fridays. We protect what matters. His face twisted, and he shoved toward the kid with the knife raised. Mrs. Worley pulled over, stood up, and stepped between them. That's enough now. He grabbed her arm and shoved her into the dashboard. For half a second, the bus was completely silent. Then a kid came over the seats like something feral, and 3 others were right behind him. The guy didn't have time to turn around before someone hit him.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What am I seeing?
Shoved her into the dashboard. For half a second, the bus was completely silent. Then a kid came over the seats like something feral, and 3 others were right behind.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Y'all see that? Y'all see that? Y'all see this? I'm gonna block it on the criminal. You see that?
The
Whoa, whoa,
guy didn't
whoa.
have
Why are his shorts so...
time to turn around before
whoa.
someone hit him in the back of the knees and he went down. The knife skittered under the seats and kids were on top of him before he could reach for it. Someone had him in a headlock while someone else pinned his arms. A girl sat on his
Headlock.
legs and went through his
Pinned
pockets
arms.
just to add insult to injury. Mrs. Worley pressed the emergency button. I need police at my location. Tell them there's no rush. The situation is handled. The guy was crying. Please get off me. I can't breathe. A kid leaned
That's what you
close
get.
to his face. You should have thought about that before you touched Mrs. Worley. When the cops showed up, they found him tied to a seat with shoelaces and snot running down his face. A man climbed
he's
onto our
bald.
school bus with a knife.
Oh, yeah, he's bald.
Dad measured me for the 5th time that day and screamed, "Why are you still 5'10"? I stared down at my 5'3" dad, and he glared. "Stop looking down at me. No son of mine will ever look down on me. We're going to fix this before it's too late." And so the next day, Dad came into my room with x-rays of my legs marked with red X's saying, "I found a surgeon who will remove these bones so that you can finally be shorter than me. I already scheduled the surgery." I stared in horror while Dad jumped around saying he couldn't wait to be taller than me. I knew I had to make the surgery impossible, so I started running 26 miles non-stop, and even though it hurt, I kept going until my legs gave out because I needed my bones to be so damaged they couldn't operate on me. And then on the day of my scheduled surgery, the doctor took one look at x-rays of my damaged legs and refused to operate on me. Dad got angry. Why? He's perfectly fine. But the surgeon shook his head and pointed at the x-ray. "His bones are too damaged. If I cut into them, they could shatter, and a shard of bone could hit his heart. Your son could die." Dad crossed his arms. "I'm okay taking that risk. Just do it so he can be shorter than me." But the doctor kept saying no, and I thought it was finally over. But when we got home, Dad grabbed his toolbox and said, "If a surgeon isn't going to fix this, then I'll do it myself."
What? Whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean I'll do it myself, buddy?
He chased me around the house screaming, "Get back here! You will be shorter than me!" I ran outside across the yard, and that's when Dad's foot got caught on the garden hose, and he fell down hard. And I saw both his legs were bent the wrong way. Dad screamed, and I called the ambulance. And when they arrived, paramedics loaded him onto a stretcher, while one of them questioned me. "How do you know this man?" he asked. When I said he was my dad, his eyes bulged, and he looked back and forth between my dad and me, and then suddenly asked, "How is he your dad? He's so short." Dad thrashed so hard in the stretcher when he heard a paramedic had to sedate him. Dad measured me for the 5th time that day.
That's insane.
When I saw Kimberly walking out of the boys' bathroom, I asked, "What were you doing in there?" She instantly froze. "I wasn't. I just accidentally went through the wrong door." But I knew that wasn't the truth. I was about to open it when she grabbed my arm. "No, don't. You can't go in there." And before I could even ask her why, I heard someone crying. "What was that?" "I don't know. Maybe it's best if we don't go in there." But I pushed the door open as she said, "No." Someone whispered, "Is someone there? Please help me." I pushed open the stall door and saw Leslie Reddick sitting on the floor holding a bunch of towels. I gasped, realizing she was pregnant and her water broke. "Please, help me." Her dad was our gym teacher, and I knew if he found out his daughter was giving birth at school, things would get messy. Just then, Kimberly burst through the door with the school nurse, and as soon as she looked at Leslie, she gasped, "Please, just don't let my dad see me." The nurse turned to me. "You, go keep watch outside. Make sure nobody comes
What? What?
in here and sees her." "What? We need to get her to a hospital." "There's no time, just go." I stepped outside trying to keep watch until a group of guys walked up to me all holding vapes. They tried to walk into the bathroom, but I stopped them. "No, you can't go vape in there." They looked confused. "What? Why?" But before I could make up some excuse, we all heard it. A scream from inside the bathroom. I thought, "Oh no, the baby must be coming." They said, "Whoa, what's happening in there?" "Nothing, I swear. Just go use the bathroom upstairs." But then more people started crowding around.
Oh,
Who's
no.
screaming? "I have to pee so bad." This was bad, but then I saw him. Mr. Reddick was coming down the hallway. He walked up to the crowd with this confused look on his face and asked, "Has anyone seen my daughter?" Oh no, I had to make up a lie fast, but before I could say anything, we all heard Leslie. "Oh my God, ah!" One of the girls said, "Hey, that kind of sounds like her in there." Mr. Reddick realized it was her and shoved past me. Oh no, we heard him yell, "What is this?" But they still had no idea what was happening until we heard Mr. Reddick yell, "Who's the father? Is it Felix? I swear I'll kill him." Everyone gasped and looked at Felix. He had been dating Leslie for 9 months, and it all perfectly added up. He was sweating and started backing up. But then the door burst open, and we saw Mr. Reddick standing there. You could see the veins in his forehead. We heard the nurse yelling, "Come on, push!" Then we heard crying from inside the bathroom. Mr. Reddick yelled, "You got her pregnant."
What?
But Felix panicked and turned, running down the hallway. Mr. Reddick took off after him like a track star. He caught up and tackled him to the ground, just as we saw Leslie come out of the bathroom holding something. "Dad, no!" Mr. Reddick pinned him to the ground and instantly started swinging, completely destroying Felix's face. Everyone panicked and pulled him off, and by the time they held him back, Leslie was crying. She yelled, "Dad, it's not his!" And when she said that, everyone went silent. Mr. Reddick stopped struggling, and even Felix looked up from the ground. Everyone's eyes went to the baby, and that's when we all saw it. Because even though Felix's face was beaten and purple, he was white. And when we saw the baby, it was definitely black. When I saw Kimberly walking out of the boys' bathroom, I asked, "What were you doing in there?" She instantly froze. "I wasn't. I just accidentally went through the..." I became my school's hero for 1 minute before everyone watched what happened next. I don't play around when it comes to Halloween, so during my teacher looked at my drawing, covered her mouth, and ran out of the room screaming. Our assignment was to draw something that makes us happy, so I drew me and my dad fishing at the lake, something we do every Saturday. I picked up my paper to see what she saw. 2 stick figures, a fishing rod, a lake, a
I don't see what's wrong. What?
building that said Larry's Bait and Tackle, and a fish that I even labeled Fish in case there was any confusion. I had no idea what I did wrong. She came back with 2 security guards, still screaming, grabbed my drawing off my desk, and pointed at me like I was dangerous. They walked me out without saying a word and sat me down in Principal Carter's office. He had my drawing under a desk lamp like he was examining a ransom note. He looked up. "Explain this." I told him it's me and my dad fishing at the lake. He pointed at my stick figure's hand. "You're telling me this is a fishing rod when I'm looking at a weapon." I told him there's a line coming off it with a fish on the end, and I literally wrote the word fish next to it. Mrs. Keller leaned in. "It looks like he's aiming at the building." I told her it's Larry's Bait and Tackle where we buy worms, and he's facing the water because that's where fish live, and that's how fishing works. I didn't understand how every adult in the room was looking at a fish and seeing a threat. Principal Carter picked up his phone and called my dad. "Mr. Davis, your son in the middle of a..."
Wait. Yo, to the last people in the live, thank you for watching. I'm gonna make another live soon, but yeah, I'm gonna go for now. Peace out. Yep, yeah, peace out. Peace out.
After in the middle of a test,